Hey guys, welcome back. It's been a while since we've had a story time, so I guess today's that day. So, as you know, I have a younger sister, and I prayed for a younger sister because at the time, as I stated one time before in a prior recording, that I had a younger brother, and my older brother was always a competition over who we couldn't share him properly because it was always the boys. So I prayed for a little sister, and when my little sister was born, I was so elated. I was so happy to have a younger sister. And I spent a lot of time with my younger sister, potty training. Now, I'm not going to say I took the responsibility of potty training her, because first of all, she learned very quickly, and my stepmom definitely potty trained her, and my great-grandmother, of course. So as time progressed, as she got older, you know, girls have certain things, girls keep secrets or what have you. So we spent a lot of time together, and I always wanted her to have the best, better than myself even at times. So in college, I made sure that I took her to dinner parties. I took her to different events to make sure that she would be able to adjust in different environments. Because as you know, sometimes when you are not, I'll say, not exposed to different environments, you don't really know how to behave. And, I felt that was something that, every girl should have, because I had to learn the hard way. I didn't have the same exposure until I went to college or until I went to certain events. When I went to Camp Integrity, I was exposed to different environments, and I went to the Governor's Ball in Georgia. I went to polo games. There were certain exposures that I allowed myself to be open to. Because when you're invited to certain things, sometimes people say, oh, I'm not going to go to that because I won't feel comfortable. I took the opposite approach because I felt like the exposure would be greater if I at least knew what was going on outside of my own circumference. Sometimes we get so comfortable in our own environments that we forget that there are other ways in which people live and other ways of which things are operating. So I exposed myself to those things, and I tried to extend that to my younger sister. So I remember actually introducing her to a gentleman. He was the best friend of my ex, and we were dating at the time, so, and, I felt like they might be a good couple, and he kept on asking, do you have a sister or whatever? So I introduced them. The relationship did not work out between the two of them, but I believe that the two of them grew and gained knowledge on relationships as they broke up, okay? As they broke up. Even when you have, because my relationship with my younger sister was more like a daughter as well as a sister, because there were times that my stepmother would leave and she needed to take time to herself, and she would leave for periods of time, and I had to step into mother mode. Now, although this is a lot of responsibility and it's not something that I asked for, in some cases I did welcome the experience because I didn't want her to want for anything, but sometimes when this happens, you get confused and you end up spoiling people. And you have to be careful in how you spoil people, because sometimes when you have such relationships as this one, you end up moving into different positions that you really shouldn't be in. And sometimes when you spoil individuals, then it turns into competition. And the person is now competing with you. And I don't even know where it started. Well, I know where it started because, I didn't totally get along with my stepmother. And sometimes when that happens, you have to look at, what is created during that period of time and space. Now, I'm sharing this story because perhaps people can learn from my experience. We sometimes wear too many hats, and we also had a spiritual advisor who taught us a great deal as well. And I know that there were certain times that he told me, do not share your experience, and I didn't realize at the time why he said it, but I know now why he said it, because when you share certain experiences and another person doesn't have those experiences, it becomes a competition. And you should never have a competition over how you spend time with God, or whatever you're exposed to while you're spending that quality time with God. That is really between you and God. And in some cases, when you're sisters, when you're close, you share certain things. And sometimes when you do that, it turns into a very complicated environment. We as individuals, as we're growing, God is teaching us different lessons. Sometimes we don't know the lesson, we don't tap into the lesson because we're so worried about everything else that's going on. You have different challenges in your lifetime. And with these challenges, you sometimes don't pay as close attention spiritually as you should. So I say this because it's really important that we take the necessary time to spend with God, regardless of what the dynamics are of a relationship, earthly relationship that you have with your siblings, friends, relationships of all types. When you are balancing your time out, regardless of who the person is, you have to take that special time with God. I realize that with all the different distractions that I have not gotten that special time in some cases, and I had to take that time back. I started out talking about my relationship with my younger sister because sometimes when you have a relationship with a friend, foe, sibling, it's important that you set certain boundaries. People sometimes think that they should have all of your time. And when you block or you say, look, I need this time for myself, or I need this time with God, people don't always understand. And when they don't understand, it turns into something else where they feel as though maybe you're doing more than you're doing. They feel like you are mishandling them or not spending quality time with them. We are not to always try to understand what other people are facing, but we are, when you communicate with people, you do understand better. But when you're constantly up against challenges with the individual, you have to separate from them because your life is now becoming more complicated than it should be. All right, there's communication and then there's non-communication. When you communicate with a person as much as you possibly can and you still feel as though you're being treated inappropriately, then you have to separate from that person. So just as any relationship, if you feel the relationship is combative, you have to set barriers. And the person might even say, oh, you ghosted me. Well, you don't really ghost the person when you try to communicate with them in so many ways and you have the same negative reaction. We all have our own stories to tell, and there's always different sides of every story. Sometimes people interpret the story differently. And when they interpret the story differently, maybe it's time for you to take time. Because I'm going to tell you, when I am spending the necessary time that I'm supposed to spend with God, when I'm out in nature, I'm not really worried about everyone else. Because that time is being spent with God. And when your time is being spent with God, and you're separating from others, although they might not always understand, that's quality time as well. So let us not forget that regardless of what your relationship is, whether it be a sibling, a partner, or whoever it might be, you can communicate and you can say this is, you can experience certain things, and you can also tell them that this time has to be spent with God, or I have to have this time allotted to me because this is what balances me. I was in a relationship a long time ago, and the gentleman that I was with did not understand my spiritual advisor and, my relationship to having to go once a month to spend time. And then we had to have the talk because sometimes in relationships, people do not understand. And when they don't understand, they say, oh, you got somebody else controlling our relationship. And that's just not the case. My spiritual advisor was there as a balancer. And the good thing about it is after having the talk and letting him know that there was no cheating involved, I was just spending that quality time with, in fact, it wasn't just with my spiritual advisor, it was my whole family. It was a family event that took place once a month. And when that time took place, he didn't understand how I could get in so late. Like, how much praying could you possibly do? But it was more than praying. It was reading, meditating, praying, and singing. It was almost like church. So it took time. But if you are having that type of relationship and the person does not understand and they are not able to come to the event, because the only way that he would have been allowed to come is if we were married. Then he would have been the extension of myself, and then he could have gone. But outside of that, he was not able to come. And a lot of things you learn when you have these different examples in your life. With these different examples, you get to see how understanding the person could be, or how combative the person can be. So I learned the great balancing act in that relationship. Whether it be your family or extended family members or even friends, there are certain things that you learn from each and every individual. And with these learning experiences, you are able to grow, okay? So never look at any relationship and just say, oh, it's terrible. See it as a form of growth. And if you need to move forward and move on, then that was the growth that you needed to experience. And now you have the power of choice. You have the option of moving forward and going on about your business. But just know that in most cases, people have invested a great deal of time before they have finally closed the door and decided to close the gate on mistreatment, I'll say, okay? So this was just an example of how we all as individuals need to make sure that we are embracing our lives. And your life is not incomplete if you don't have certain people in it. These people are gifts if you're able to work well together. If not, if it's consistently a challenge, then you know that you have to make the appropriate choices and doing what you feel is appropriate in your life. Everyone has their own way of handling things. But this is definitely a loving experience when you are able to see everything as it is unfolding and make the right choices, okay? So it's so lovely being you, and thank you for joining us today.